My proposal, of course, as I said, was not at all binding. It was only meant if the time we do this, we run out of ideas or so. And of course, I have a lot of ideas, but I want to send to you these in advance to you, so that you, if you have nothing you want to bring up yourself, that you have something to pick and choose from. And I do not dominate this talk here. And I propose that we at first say some short words to ourselves, and I will start with this, how I remember to have met you. Mm-hmm. I have seen your comments, I think, partly on YouTube videos and partly in the chat window when there were live talks. And I think the first time I heard your voice where when you wanted to contribute something which may be put in the area of a little bit nitpicking or clarifying things, and this remembered me much as I myself, because I also not shy away from telling globe earthers that something is wrong, to misleading, to not quite lucky an explanation. And I also have some things we may or may not talk about this now. As some minor point. And when then your comment on your own video was that you wanted to hear how the 5G situation is here in Germany, I thought we can extend this a little bit and talk about this and maybe about other things. And our first short conversation was quite delightful for me. I found, which I knew already in advance, that we have a little bit of common history, not personally, but in the things we do professionally. And so we agreed on to have this about an hour session and talk about this and that and everything that springs to our mind, or about the things that I have pre-planned. And if you want to add something, of course, you're welcome. And if you want to this first point, how we met, to contribute something or to add something, then feel free to do that.
Yes, I think I still recall it. It was, I just forgot what the name was of that channel where they had this discussion. And
was Geostreber, a German chemistry, has now finished his university degree, I think. I think it wasn't it with Rex Rhetoric and Slice McCain and this group?
No, I think it was on the American.
Okay.
But I forgot that they broke up recently, Steve and the other guy. I lost your sound for a minute.
No? Is it back?
Okay, so I have, you wanted to add how we got to know each other.
Yeah, and the program it was the American talk show, I believe, with Steve Miller and
Steve McRae, and but he had lost his channel for then.
Yeah, they have been fighting it. Yeah. So, but that's where it was, and one guy, not Steve, but the other one, really responded very agitated. I remember, but then I got some comments later from you that you had heard that, and you said that I was right trying to say what I wanted to say there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually also my point here. There are so many who criticize the flat earthers and the science deniers and so on. It's so easy to criticize them, and therefore I sometimes rather like to find the weak spots among our own explanations and things we tell the people, and because it's really easy to trash the flat earth believers.
Yeah, but it's still okay to always stay sharp.
Yeah.
And if we talk science, we should try to do that as good as possible.
Yeah, and I think we skip the second point with our background. We have personal background, both a little bit, or not only a little bit, a professional life of electrical engineering and software engineering. And what was your focus, more hardware development or?
Yes, I did. Well, basically, when I finished my study, I immediately did an open letter to Philips, which was in my hometown. And I said, well, I'm interested in doing something in professional audio and or for the military. And then I got invited the same week even. And we had a talk, and the guy said, well, professional audio is not going very well with Philips, so we're probably going to stop that. And if you want to do military, you have to move to Hengelo. And that's a part in the Netherlands where I do not really want to live. So I said, okay, then we're finished. And I closed my Mapwet papers, ready to move. And then the guy said, oh, wait, maybe I have something. And he went in a drawer and looking in all kinds of papers. And then it turned out that they were looking for a hardware developer for a special secret department of Philips, which was doing encryption devices for the army.
Okay. I have a friend here in Germany who also did a lot of this encryption stuff and even had written a book on it.
Okay.
But I think this is sufficient so that our listeners understand a little bit about our background, and it is nicely connects to the topic you brought up when you requested to know how in Germany whether there are also 5G masts that burn. And maybe you can say a little bit to this. I have put this on as a first point, or the first item on the list, because meanwhile you have listened to one discussion from Michael Thun or MC Thun, I think.
Yes.
Where did you know him before? Or?
I had seen some of his videos before, but that's some time ago.
Ah, yeah. Okay, and he does many talks, and he also stays very calm always. I would not have had
his patience
to bear this idiot he had on last time. Yeah. But he was a little bit about, and I feared he would make an error there about we can shortly talk, and I contacted him later via mail, and he told me that he was well aware of this fact, so my fear that he did something, may say something wrong there, was not based on facts. But what he asked his interlocutor was about the inverse square law.
Yeah.
And how much the power of an antenna gets less when you say compare when you're 20 meter away to 40 meter away. Mm-hmm. So he thinks in inches and foot and so, but basically I feared, he says that if you have a 5G antenna or so and you are say 20 meter away and that it drops to a quarter if you go 40 meter away. Mm-hmm. And I could not explain to myself how it really works until I checked Wikipedia, and it would be interesting if I interpret this right, that if you have a directed antenna, not a point source with I think it's called isotropic radiation, then you the model is to virtually assume that the power, the point from which the power radiates is far behind the antenna from the point you look at it.
Yeah.
So if you have, for example, a parabol antenna or so, which has a strong degree of bundling the electromagnetic waves, and you are 10 meter away from it, then the effective source of the power is maybe 100 meter away from you. So you have to go from the 10 meter you are away, another 100 meter and 110 meters away until the power drops to a quarter what you measure 10 meters away. Is it approximately right?
I'm not a real antenna expert, but that could be the case. But I have a but already. Yeah. If that would be the case with directional antennas like Yagi antennas, etc., or with the radar, then that could be the case. But I don't think that many of these antennas are that directional, because if I walk around, it still has to be some sort of an omnidirectional antenna, and maybe it only covers like 120 degrees or something like that. But it's not going to be a real directional antenna in the sense as you were thinking.
Yeah, but as soon as the beam, even if it's only 120 degrees, then all the power that say it's in all directions 120 degree, and let's assume for easiness that it's a square. Then if I think about how much from a sphere surface this is, it is a third in one direction, a third in another direction, so it's probably not more than a tenth of a sphere surface.
Yeah.
And therefore the virtual radiation point must be far behind it, I think. But if it is not your area of expertise, we can also drop it and leave it to the experts.
Yeah, now, I think what will happen is that you will get more power within the 120 degrees, so you're more efficient.
Yeah.
But you will still be radiating, and the radiation of that 120 degrees will still be, let's say, a waveform which is circular, only the corner, the 120 degrees, and then still the inverse law will be fitted.
Yeah, that exactly is the point. If you take you are always some meters away, or even some 10 or 20 or
at least
meters
yes.
from the antenna away. And now from this point, if you double the distance, does the power really drop so dramatically as from the inverse square law? And I don't think this is the case. What I came up thinking was, if I think at a laser pointer, which of course is also a divergent beam, but on say 10, 20, 30 meter away, it's hardly any much diverging.
Yeah.
And therefore I think the power drops not that dramatically.
But I think that the laser, in that sense, behaves more in the quantum mechanic field than in the electromagnetic field.
Okay, I think we have to conclude that we both are not experts on this.
Right.
Maybe the laser was the wrong thing. Think on a very good spotlight. A very good spotlight, which only it is
that I know sure.
Diameter.
No, that I know sure. That is inverse law.
But just a moment. If the diameter where the light leaves the spotlight is 1 meter, and say 100 meter away, you have 10 meter diameter of the circle of light. Then you could go from the 10 meter to the 1 meter and look where lines meet behind the spotlight. And this is the point from which you have to calculate the inverse square law.
Yeah, I think that is correct.
Yeah, this is the model I came up with. Okay, so we both agree here. Maybe some expert, if you send this later to the internet, maybe some expert can say something to this.
Yeah, but the whole thing about working and talking about this stuff is that you also admit when you're not 100% sure, and that you're capable of discussing it together and visualizing it the way you do, and then automatically, if people at least understand a little bit, they can immediately then see, okay, that's probably indeed the way it should work. But for the whole 5G discussion, I don't think that is the real problem, is it?
I can imagine that it is a little bit more relevant as you think, because you surely have heard of the MIMO technology, MIMO, which is used to. You have many small antennas, and you have a small phase shift between the signal on them, and this directs the beam effectively as the waves overlay in a certain direction, so that they amplify, and there's more energy in that direction, and therefore it's clear that less energy can be in the other directions. Yeah. So it are effectively directed antenna.
No, that's correct. But what I hear from the people who oppose 5G is they claim that now there is a much stronger beam that is more dangerous, and what they forget is that whatever it beams toward, it's just the one device asking for the connection.
Yeah.
So it is basically safer for all the people around it.
Yes, of course, I'm not in any way nervous that this might deadly radiation or so, and it's not in the energy range of ionizing radiation and so. And my basic knowledge of physics tells me that it is not in any way dangerous.
Yeah. Have you seen it's unfortunately a Dutch video of mine where I showed this a PowerPoint where I have all the frequencies of GSM, 2G, 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, and then you can see that all frequencies are basically in the same already used bands.
Yeah. I have not seen this from you, but I know it. What's, just to refresh my memory, 5G, is this also around the 5 gigahertz?
Let me see. I'm going to put it on screen. You won't not be able to see it, but that's for the people then who are watching this video. Let me see. Okay. I need my glasses. So what I show there is that ATF1 had a very old car radio was 150 megahertz. Then ATF2 was 450 megahertz. ATF3 G is
still, yeah, okay.
And then I go to ATF3 3G, and then with 3G you already have like the 850, 900 megahertz, and the 1.92. 4G. Yeah, 4G gets an additional 2.6 gigahertz, and then Wi-Fi is 2.6 megahertz and 5.2 and 5.8 gigahertz, and in the future 62 gigahertz. And if we now take 5G, it is 700 megahertz and 3.5 gigahertz, and later 26 gigahertz. And if you put that all underneath each other as a sort of bars representing the frequency domains they are in, you will see that there is nothing really new about 5G, and that most of the frequencies or very nearby frequencies are already in use, and people complaining, they're just 10 years or 20 years too late complaining.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my points.
Yeah.
It's now getting dark in your room.
Yeah, switch on the light. Just a second.
People won't see you anymore.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll also pull up the blinds once more. Okay. Yeah, okay then. So far this one, a close relative of mine he died last year. He was very, very worried about this stuff, and he could not even sleep if there was a power supply in the wall socket close to his bed, and so he pulled all this stuff off. And yes, okay. Maybe we are wrong with this, but I think I have to trust in the companies that do these things, that this is checked and on the safe side.
Well,
that an international flight gives me more radiation as anything else. What happens here?
Absolutely. The way I also have a globe where at least 4 billion people approximately are using for the last 10 years all kinds of devices, at least 2G, 3G. Yeah?
Yeah.
And as long as we don't see major amounts of people drop dead because of it, I think that statistics can help us understand that it's probably not that dangerous. If it was, there should be something visible. And, there should be relations between illnesses or death in regions where we have high concentrations.
Yeah. That's the same then as I think. And just as a personal anecdote, the first 3G phones had 2 watt of power.
Yeah.
I think you remember this, the famous Motorola Bone. It was named in German, it was named Motorola Knochen or Bone, and it looked very military. I think that the case was also military design. Do you remember this first true battery-powered phone you could...
No, I only know the Philips Handy, but yeah.
Okay, and the next one were the Ericsson.
Yeah.
My first handy was the Ericsson 172.
Mm-hmm. My first was a Nokia. No.
Yeah, and they had 2 watt of power, and I think the later generations had only 1 watt of power.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, in mid-90s, many people feared the effects it could have on telephoning, and we have a typically rather neutral magazine here in Germany, which does test stuff, Stiftung Warentest, maybe you know this or heard of this. They have no advertisers in their magazine, so they are independent from influence of manufacturers and so. But this was one time when I learned how a paper can make things interesting, because on their title page, they had the title, I say it on German, beim Telefonieren heiße Ohren. Hot ears if you phone. And there was a handy image. Yeah. When you then got into the article about the test, it was very okay. And there was a small sidebar. And the sidebar was titled, beim Telefonieren heiße Ohren, ? And the content of the sidebar was that actually you have not anything to fear from it. So the message on the title of the whole magazine was completely contrary to what they actually tested. Because they omitted the question mark. They omitted the question mark on the title page, and they had a question mark on where they really explained the stuff. And if you read the explanations, they said, probably not.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I always tell people if they want to know or start about this, I say, well, if you take a device that size and you are going to dissipate more than 2 watts in it, the device will get warm, one way or the other. Yeah. And now I'm holding it against my ear. Now I bet you that my ear will also become warm.
Yeah.
Definitely, and so warm that you can measure it with a thermal imaging camera or. And it doesn't mean that that at that moment you are killing yourself with lethal emanation.
Yeah. Okay, and what is the state currently where you live?
Well,
I said where I live, I don't see any burning 5G lamp posts or something. And how is the situation?
We have had I believe 20 already. But there is an organization called Stop 5G in the Netherlands, and they have tried in a let's say a so decent manner, without with just peaceful protests and not burning anything down, and they started a court case. And there's a special sort of court case you can do if you very quickly want something to happen or to stop. So they wanted to stop the rollout of 5G. At the same time, Vodafone had already started 5G on their 4G frequencies. Because 5G is, people forget that, but for 80% it's just protocols. And the judge could not immediately. Normally he tries within a day to give an answer, and he didn't. And he came back a week later and said that that he was the right judge to ask to stop it, because the state wanted to prevent that as well. But he then said that he believes that the state is taking all the proper measurements, like having cars drive around and always measuring the output of all antennas to see if there is never any antenna going over the limits as defined by the EU. So in that case, that all the warranties were taken to take care of the health of the people. That was basically, in short, the outcome. And therefore, for the moment, 5G and the rollout of that is not stopped by court.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the reason why it's now slowing down a little bit on burning down everything, because they didn't win. Somebody told me that there was some sort of bet going on between English, Dutch, and other countries, people on the web, trying to be the one country where they burned down the most antennas.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a global thing, this fear, and it's totally filled with a lot of misinformation, unfortunately. I saw, and I used that in one of my latest Dutch videos, a guy walking around with an antenna, an EM field measuring device. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, you look at, and now you see that antenna is measuring, so now data is passing by, or something like that, he said. But he was not aware that he was holding his antenna next to the wireless microphone of the guy who was interviewing him at a 1 meter distance for Corona. And so each time when the microphone came near, the thing started to peep. And he said, oh, now radiation is going by, as if radiation is something that goes by in packets.
Mm. Do you know the channel of Mick West? Mick?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah, and he had a recent 1.5 hour talk with someone who believes in UFO.
Okay.
And I think it was because now there is on the History Channel, there is a series about some haunted ranch, although if you so want.
Yeah.
And Mick West identified a similar thing when they went with a magnetometer around, I think, and it was quite similar that the guy that said he is an expert on doing these measurements obviously had no idea how to use this measurement device and got the completely wrong readings. And do you? How long do you know Mick West from the time before?
No. From the time of it was a flat earth or something else, which on a Metadunk website of his, I once ended up there, but I also noticed that he is a little bit of a real nerd, even more than we are. And I think he's also a little bit autistic. So if it is not 100% correct, he can be very annoying. Yeah. So we can say, okay, we don't know exactly, but the general idea is this, or the general idea is that. And that's never good for him. And he will then remove your comments because it either is exact or...
Okay.
Yeah.
I never commented on the site, but I had a personal exchange, a short one, which would actually be one of the points I have here that we might talk about. Mm-hmm. And he thinks it's a good idea, but probably you need to have too much an idea of geometry on a sphere to understand it. And if you want, we can go to this point now. Shall we?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so when I am asked what is a very easy proof for a flat Earth, for not flat Earth, on contra flat Earth, and that you can also do yourself, I typically come up with, let me just see, easy globe Earth proofs. Of course, no substantial change of angular sun size of the angular sun. Size. Here's missing of sun and moon, because that means they must be far away. If the angular size doesn't change during the day and during the seasons, that is clear to both of us, I think.
Yeah.
And what I typically suggest differently from this is that you don't need to use a solar filter if you want to do it for the sun. You can also build a pinhole camera from a long cardboard tube and observe the sun through it without any filter. And you see it will not change its angular size. And you can also the geometry of a, pinhole camera probably.
Yeah, I think that Flat Earth Math made such a camera.
Flat Earth Math has the experiment. It was about the same time when I made my video about it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's older then. I actually came to the pinhole camera when we had a partial eclipse here in Germany, not the 1999 one, but later, I think some in the 10 years ago or so, and I heard it in the radio that you can watch the eclipse even if you have no solar filters. But that is not what I wanted to talk about. The other thing is I have it here, adjusting dishes for TV satellite receptions. If you do your geometry and you can get the positions you have to use on the internet, and you do the geometry, you'll get a point 36,000 kilometers away over the equator. But a very easy thing, and I seldom get a flat earther to talk about this, is I ask, what is the distance North Pole to equator, and what is the length of the equator? Mm-hmm. And on a flat Earth, no matter with what number you come up, it must be 2 pi times that. Mm-hmm. But we have 4 times it. And this is 50% difference.
Again. And again, I'm not sure if I catch you now. You say...
Yeah. Okay, now then let me ask you. North Pole to equator, what is the distance?
That is measured...
10,000 kilometers.
Yes. And
10,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
And then, if it were flat, what would be the length of the equator?
That's
62,000.
Yeah.
But it's actually 40,000.
Yeah, but so it's 50%, about.
It's 50%. Yeah, it's 50%.
More.
It depends on from which side you calculate.
I have a video on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So and then they sometimes say, no, I don't know if these measures are right. Maybe the distance North Pole to equator is other than they say us. And therefore, I sometimes proposed a simple GPS-based experiment everyone can do in about an hour. But it's you really have to understand how much the same distance in meter varies when you walk north-south and compared to when you walk east-west.
Yeah.
So what I propose is you look at the map where you live and find two streets or a real huge parking lot or something where you have, say, now with GPS that we don't have any longer these inaccuracies which were deliberately switched on the system. The GPS measures, I think, exact to about 3 meters or so if you wait a moment.
Much better.
Yeah, much better. Oh, let's take 3 meters.
Yeah.
So you are within 1% if you walk 300 meters east-west and walk 300 meters north-south. And then from the GPS receiver, you get the distance in arc minutes or in fractions of a degree or so, and you build the ratio of both.
Yeah.
And that you even don't need to measure the distance exactly which you walk, in which directions. You can take a bicycle and push it and count the revolutions of the front wheel, which you have maybe marked with something. And you go 300 meters this direction, note how much this is in fractions of degrees of latitude, and then you do east-west and do the longitude difference, and then you build the ratio of the two values, and you get the cosine of your latitude.
Yeah, it's a nice one, but they will not understand at all what you're talking about now.
Yeah, and therefore I think one should illustrate, and this is one of the videos I want to make. I have a globe here. I have also styrofoam globes, and so one could put this in a video where you explain on a flat plane very graphically and maybe really by using such little pins here. Can you see this? Such things here that you can use for pin boards and push them in a styrofoam globe and on a flat styrofoam, and you explain how degrees of longitude and latitude work. And what most flat earthers give you is that the circumference of a circle is 2 pi the radius. And you explain this on a flat space, you explain this on a globe, and then when you look on a globe from bottom up, you see also that the circles here for lines of same, I have always to think latitude, lines of same latitude, get closer together the far, if you look directly from above, that they get closer together the farther you get, if you look from above, from the,
and from the equator,
Yeah, and if you do this on a flat space, they have the same, and then you can, you have a little bit to explain about the cosine function. But I think 20 to 30 minutes videos, you could explain the geometry and then come to the experiment. And it's if someone asks me if I had done these things myself, which is their favorite questions, have you done it yourself?
Yeah.
I can say I have done this. And for me it fits. And maybe somewhere in the world is someone where it doesn't fit at all. And it would be especially interesting, of course, on the southern hemisphere, because there the differences then get dramatic.
Yeah, they do get dramatic. And that's one of the things you could also see. And they have tried that. They know that the problem they have is that Australia is a little bit too wide. And people have now tried with arrival and departure times of a train going from Perth to Sydney.
I have seen this. This is,
and then they try to somehow prove it. Now, the one thing I found to be very funny is that somewhere in the 200 proofs the Earth is not a spinning ball, they have this so-called proof of two French guys that did from Spain to Ibiza a test with lamps over I don't know how many, almost 100 kilometers or more, which would be impossible on the globe. And the fun part there is that if you look at who these people actually were, then these were the people that did measure the Parisian meridian. So they were actually involved in measuring the distance from the North Pole to the equator to find that was indeed 10,000 kilometers. So the guys they use somehow to say, look, what they did is impossible on a globe. The same guys were doing that test, trying to triangulate distances to measure North Pole to equator. And if you say, well, what they did is correct, so they did measure that distance because they think the Earth is flat, but they did measure that distance the way they did, then it is also correct that the North Pole to the equator is 10,000 kilometers. And if that is correct, then the equator there would have to be 63,000 kilometers. And then the sun would have to move suddenly with 2,500 kilometers per hour instead of etc., etc. And suddenly the whole model drops down.
You probably also know Bob the Science Guy.
Yeah.
And he had recently tried an approach where he said, okay, I give you, because flat earthers always say, I don't know what shape it is, but it is not a globe. And he says, I don't know what shape it is, I only know it's not a flat plane. And because this and that. And it's very nice.
Yeah, but people like also Slice Parkane and so on have done tests where they had asked people to measure the angle to the sun. And then he integrated it all in one, and you could see that on a globe it would all point to a sun far away, and it could not work on a flat Earth. And the best animations, I think, come from a Belgian guy. And that's difficult. Now I have to...
Jos Leijs?
Yeah, Jos, yeah. You know them, they are so magnificent. He actually goes to certain points on the globe, puts an arrow and lets it point in the direction people actually see the sun. And then on the flat Earth it goes in all directions, and then he pulls the flat Earth around a ball shape, and suddenly all the lines end up very far away. So I think that those are very nice. I'm going to put you now for 1 minute on pause because I get a dry mouth and I want to pour myself a cup of coffee. Maybe you do that as well.
Okay, yes, I get a glass of wine or something. Okay.